D47 is still alive. Cat risk turned 4 last month. Apex, the office cat, not the actuarial software, has been removed from the premises following an incident involving the Bloomberg terminal. I have not asked for details. This is Sarah Okonkwo. I found the actuary who signed off on the longevity assumptions for the Meridian Pension Trust in 2023. His name is Dr. Peter Adeyemi. He is 71 years old. He is retired. He lives in Edinburgh. He agreed to speak to me because he said, and this is a direct quote, "Someone should place the assumption on record." I signed it. I am the someone. I found him through the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries membership records. I called him on a Thursday afternoon. He picked up on the second ring. He said, "I have been waiting for someone to call about the 2003 valuation for 21 years. I said, "I am calling." He said, "Good." We met the following Tuesday. Let me tell you precisely what Dr. Peter Adeyemi did. In April 2003, Dr. Adeyemi completed the triennial actuarial valuation of the Meridian Pension Trust. The valuation covered 4,800 active and deferred members. The longevity assumptions he used were based on the PA92 mortality tables, projected forward using medium cohort improvement factors. Male members, projected to live to 79 years. Female members, 82.3 years. He ran a sensitivity analysis. He increased the longevity assumptions by 2 years, just to test the model. The funding level dropped from 94% to 81%. The required employer contribution increase jumped from 8% to 22%. He wrote a note in his working papers. April 9th, 2003. 2 sentences. Longevity improvement trends have been accelerating beyond the standard table projections, and actual experience may diverge materially from these assumptions. No adjustment has been made to the base assumptions at this time. He called the pensions manager at Caldwell Group, the employer. Informal conversation. He mentioned the longevity uncertainty. The manager asked what a 2-year increase would do to contribution rates. Dr. Adeyemi said, 22%, immediate. The manager said, that is not feasible in the current financial environment. Dr. Adeyemi used the standard tables, 94% funded, 8% contribution increase. He signed the valuation on April 14, 2003. By 2015, the divergence between assumed and actual longevity was visible in the fund experience data. The 2015 valuation recommended a formal review of longevity assumptions. The trustee board deferred the review pending a broader strategic review of the fund. The strategic review was never completed. In 2019, the Meridian Pension Trust ran out of money. The actual average longevity for the cohort as of last year is 84.7 years for men, 87.1 for women. 5.7 years longer than the model said. 4,800 members received reduced payments starting in 2019. The fund collapse report identified the longevity assumption signed by Dr. Adeyemi in 2003 and carried forward through 4 subsequent valuations as a primary contributing factor. Dr. Adeyemi has kept the signed actuarial valuation for 21 years. He still has his working papers. His home is in Morningside, Quiet Street, Bay Window. The signed actuarial valuation was on the table when I arrived. 114 pages. Bound. The signature page visible on top. We sat down. He poured tea. He said, "You want to know about the longevity assumptions?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I will show you the valuation first. Then I will show you the working papers." He opened the valuation to page 47, the longevity assumption table. He read the key figures aloud. Male cohort projected longevity, 79.0 years. Female cohort projected longevity, 82.3 years. Improvement factors applied. Medium cohort, PA92 base. He said, "Those are the assumptions I signed." Then he read the actual figures, the ones we know now. Male cohort actual longevity to date, 84.7 years. Female cohort actual longevity to date, 87.1 years. He closed the valuation. He opened his working papers, a separate folder, also kept for 21 years. He turned to a page dated April 9th, 2003, a handwritten note, 2 sentences. He read them aloud. First sentence: longevity improvement trends have been accelerating beyond the standard table projections, and actual experience may diverge materially from these assumptions. Second sentence: no adjustment has been made to the base assumptions at this time. He put the working papers down on the table. He said, I wrote those 2 sentences on April 9th, 2003. I signed the valuation 5 days later. I looked at both documents, the note, the signature. I said, the note and the signature are both yours. He said, yes. I said, I find that... I paused. I was trying to find the right word. I said, I find that the most honest document I have seen in this work. He said, it is the only document I have ever been ashamed of. There is a thing that happens in pension fund failures. The argument always goes the same way. The actuaries say, we used the standard tables. The trustees say, we relied on professional advice. The employer says, we made the contributions we were told to make. Everyone followed process. Everyone has documentation. No one is responsible. Dr. Adeyemi's note does not fit that pattern. He wrote that he knew the assumptions might be wrong. He wrote that he did not adjust them. He signed anyway. I asked him why he was telling me this. He said, because I wrote it down. The note is in the working papers. It has always been in the working papers. Someone was always going to find it. I would rather place it on record myself than have it found. I said, you kept the working papers for 21 years. He said, yes. I said, you could have destroyed them. He looked at me. He said, I could have. But then I would not know if I had destroyed them because they were evidence or because I was ashamed. I kept them so I would know which one it was. I said, which one is it? He said, both. I asked him to tell me what happened in April 2003, not the technical part, the part where he decided. He said, I completed the valuation using the standard tables. The funding level came out at 94%. That meant the employer, Caldwell Group, would need to increase contributions by approximately 8% to restore full funding over the statutory period. Then I ran a sensitivity analysis. I increased the longevity assumptions by 2 years, just to see what would happen. The funding level dropped to 81%. The required contribution increase went to 22%. I wrote the note in my working papers. Longevity trends accelerating. Actual experience may diverge. Then I called the pensions manager at Caldwell. Informal conversation. I said, the valuation is nearly complete. Funding level looks to be around 94%. Employer contribution increase in the range of 8%. He said, 8% is difficult but manageable. I said, I should mention that longevity assumptions carry some uncertainty. If members live longer than projected, the funding position could deteriorate. He said, how much longer? I said, possibly 2 years, possibly more. He said, what would that do to the contribution rate? I said, it would require an immediate increase of approximately 22%. He said, that is not feasible in the current financial environment. Dr. Adeyemi stopped. He looked at his hands. He said, that is the sentence I have remembered for 21 years. Not feasible in the current financial environment. I said, what did you say? He said, I said nothing. I thanked him for his time. I hung up. I sat at my desk. I had the valuation in front of me. Standard tables. 94% funded. 8% contribution increase. Adjusted tables. 81% funded. 22% contribution increase. I used the standard tables. I signed the valuation on April 14th. I said, because the employer said 22% was not feasible. He said yes. I said, you wrote that you knew, then you signed anyway. He said yes. I have looked at a lot of pension fund failures. I have read a lot of actuarial valuations. I have never seen someone write down that they knew and then sign anyway. I told him that. He said, I think you have. I think you just have not seen the working papers. I did not understand what he meant. Not then. Before I went to Edinburgh, I pulled the actuarial valuations for Meridian Pension Trust from 2006 onward. All public record, all filed with the pensions regulator. 2006 valuation. Different actuary. Carried forward the 2003 longevity assumptions with updated improvement factors. 2009 valuation. Different actuary. Carried forward the 2003 longevity assumptions. 2012 valuation. Different actuary. Carried forward the 2003 longevity assumptions. 2015 valuation. Different actuary. Carried forward the 2003 longevity assumptions. Recommended a review. Review deferred. 4 valuations. 4 different actuaries. All carried forward the assumptions Dr. Adeyemi signed in 2003. I did not have the working papers for those valuations. Working papers are not public record. They stay with the actuary. I asked Dr. Adeyemi if he knew the actuaries who completed the later valuations. He said, I know 2 of them, professionally. I said, do you think they noted the longevity divergence in their working papers? He said, I think you should ask them. So I did. It took 4 weeks. The 2006 actuary is retired. The 2009 actuary is still practicing. The 2012 actuary moved to Australia. The 2015 actuary is now chief actuary at a large consultancy. I reached all 4. I asked each one the same question. Did you note the longevity assumption risk in your working papers? All 4 said yes. I asked, did you adjust the assumptions? All 4 said no. The 2009 actuary sent me his working papers. There is a note dated March 2009, 1 paragraph. It says, emerging experience suggests longevity. Improvements are exceeding standard table projections. Actual member experience now shows a trend approximately 1.2 years above the valuation assumptions. Recommend monitoring at next valuation. No adjustment made at this time. The 2015 actuary sent me her working papers. There is a note dated June 2015, 2 paragraphs. It says, longevity experience continues to exceed valuation assumptions. Divergence now estimated at 3.8 years for male members. Formal review of longevity assumptions recommended. Trustee Board has indicated that review will be deferred, pending broader strategic review of fund. No adjustment made at this time. 5 actuaries, 5 notes, no adjustment. I went back to Edinburgh 2 weeks ago. I brought the working paper notes with me. Copies, all 5. I laid them side by side on Dr. Adeyemi's table. 2003, 2006, 2009, 2012, 2015. 5 different actuaries, 5 different years, 5 different notes saying the same thing. He looked at them for a long time. He said, they all knew. I said, yes. He said, they all signed. I said, yes. He picked up his note. The first one, April 2003. He said, I started something. I said, you documented something that was already happening. He said, that is a generous interpretation. I said, it is the accurate one. He looked at all 5 notes again. He said, 5 notes, no adjustment, 4,800 people. There is a model underneath every pension fund. It says, people will live this long. It says money will grow at this rate. It says contributions will continue at this level. The model is always wrong. The question is how wrong and whether the wrongness fits inside the tolerance. Dr. Adeyemi's model said people would live to 79. They lived to 84.7. 5.7 years outside the tolerance. But the note in the working papers says he knew the model might be wrong. He wrote it down. He signed anyway. And 4 actuaries after him wrote the same thing down and signed anyway. I have been doing this work for 3 years now. I have opened a lot of models. I have found a lot of assumptions that were wrong. This is the first time I have found 5 people who wrote down that they knew and signed anyway. I put all 5 notes back in their folders. I said, D47 is still alive. He said, I beg your pardon? I said, nothing, a reference case from a different model. He said, how old? I said, 37. He said, assigned longevity? I did not answer immediately. He said, assigned longevity? I said, 68. He closed his eyes. He said, what is the divergence? I said, we do not know yet. He is still alive. He opened his eyes. He said, have you written it down? I closed my notebook. I went home. D47 is still alive. He is 37 years old now. He was a model when I started this. A reference case. A data point in a longevity projection I built 18 months ago for a small occupational pension scheme. 1,200 members. Private sector. Underfunded. I used standard tables. I noted in my working papers that longevity improvements were running ahead of the standard projections. I noted that actual experience might diverge. I did not adjust the assumptions. The trustees accepted the valuation. The employer contribution stayed at 11%. An adjusted assumption would have required 16%. The trustees said 16% was not manageable at this time. D47 is not a data point anymore. I do not know what he is. I just know he is still alive.